All right, we'll get started today. Thanks for everyone joining for the weekly MarketX webinar. Today we have Mike, our head of investments, and Wissam, who's our colleague based in Dubai, joining me as well. All right, we'll get started today. All right, so we'll start with an overview of what's happening in the private market. I think many of us have noticed that the latest few months has been a bloodbath of crazy valuation readjustments in both the public and private markets. And for the last few weeks, we've been gathering intel around the world in terms of figuring out how investors are feeling about the market, what our companies are doing to equip themselves with the drastic market downturn. So today we have a live discussion on what we think are some of the top ideas emerging from the research we've been doing. The first part, I will cover various ideas that we have talked to our clients about regarding the existing portfolio MarketX have. And at the moment, how are these companies doing? How we see these macro trends will impact some companies such as Klarna, Toss, our existing investments in companies such as Epic Games. Second part, we're going to cover newer ideas that we have right now in terms of what we see are as areas for growth, whether geopolitically due to regulation or some areas that thanks to the innovation in a specific area, companies that we see are undervalued opportunities. So let's get started with first of all covering existing portfolio updates. So the first part we would like to talk about is Klarna. I'm sure many of you have read the existing news that Klarna has recently went through a down round around 6 billion. Obviously, this is very concerning. However, with the 800 million fresh capital that's currently invested, the company has raised, we know that at least from MarketX view, this company is not anywhere close to running out of cash. With companies that have now suffered quite a bit from both the economic downturn the world has experienced, also with overall negative sentiment on buy now, pay later companies. We believe that Klarna is trying to save its runway and still, trying to become the market leader in the buy now, pay later segment. With the banking charter, they're also ramping up other lines of businesses. So with that, our overview on what has happened in the buy now, pay later. Of course, there are certain players, as you know, not performing super well right now in the public market. In the private market, because the correlation between existing companies and also the companies that have now become the later stage giants, we do see that these companies are trying to extend their runway to more than 36 months to weather through the storm that's currently in the market. With that, today we're also going to ask our head of investment, Mike, to share a couple new ideas on the fintech and also areas that he sees, are upcoming areas of focus.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Last week we talked more about the macro. This week I wanted to maybe share some ideas related to a passion area that I've been having since COVID started, and that's in the area of mental health. While I think a lot of companies in this space are not in super late stage, I feel like there's definitely emerging companies that have a lot of potential in the space to become really big winners down the road. Two things I wanted to highlight were around both psychedelics as well as in VR for mental health. So I think people have definitely heard about the psychedelics, so I'll maybe share that a little bit later. But I want to quickly touch base on the idea of using virtual reality as a tool for mental health. Just quick understanding about my background, I definitely suffered some challenges in mental health during the initial COVID area, I think as many people did. And one of the basic learnings I had was around how our brain is very susceptible to our environment, as well as how crazy our brains are without even understanding them, right? The brain research that exists right now is very limited. And we're starting to see more research come out related to how our brains really react to different stimuli and different situations. For example, we can trick ourselves to believing that we're in a very different area, right? So, for example, you see those YouTube videos of people playing VR games and they're just immersed in it, right? They can't walk, a tightrope without feeling like they're falling, and they're, slaying different characters, playing games without, regard to where they are physically, and sometimes hilarity ensues. But in reality, a lot of these applications have been studied since the 1990s around very severe mental health challenges such as PTSD and anxiety, and a variety of different ailments. And you see more and more adoption by hospitals, by psychiatrists, by various people in the medical field that are utilizing this type of technique. I wanted to highlight one thing that I thought was interesting with respect to PTSD. And this article was shared in the New York Times a few years back. And basically it categorized different VR experiences that help PTSD soldiers come back and have a better understanding and better ability to address their trauma that they had when fighting in the Middle East. So here, basically what the VR is able to create is, instead of having the soldier or the veteran imagine a situation where they had these experiences in order to address them and take control of them under the guidance of various mental health professionals, they don't need to imagine anymore. They can just relive it to a certain situation where now they can experience it, and they immediately have very emotional reactions to what's happening there, and then they can help work through that progress with their therapist. And these types of VR situations, as well as applications, whether it's in the hospital, in a clinical setting, but also at home, exist for various different types of different kind of severity of ailments, from basic anxiety to very, very severe cases as well. So, there are an emerging amount of different companies that have various business models, whether it's B2B, B2C, B2B2C, B2B2B, that are in different stages of development and the growth and later growth side, that we're taking a look at and speaking to. One founder I recently spoke to is Oxford VR, which is a spinoff of Oxford University that has been developing these type of solutions over the years, and are getting much more stronger traction interim. So I think, for me, in the long term, I never thought that VR was something interesting as an investment tool, but when learning more about mental health and the potential here, I could imagine a future where VR, 10 years from now, is standard of care for a lot of different types of ailments. And then quickly on the second area that we've been looking at is psychedelics. Many people might be familiar with psychedelics of the past, in the 1960s and 70s, where kind of hippies were dropping acid and going to festivals. But there was a lot of research around that time to how psychedelics can affect the brain and really help people basically reset their mind. I think most recently I heard an analogy that was very interesting around psychedelics. It was specifically described as kind of, if people are skiers, imagine if you go down a mountain and carving a specific path over and over at a specific time, you would that path would be the only path you could potentially take down the mountain, because it's so ingrained in the mountain, and the other places you've left untouched, they're hardened. And that is an analogy for our brain, that we have certain mental functions or mental beliefs or certain ways that our brains are wired, where we have to have automatic responses to things that that we built up over the years. So the interesting part of psychedelics is that they make an analogy that it is potentially a new layer of snow covering the previous previous route. So now you have much more freedom to potentially take a new path down, and basically have new neural pathways be created. It's a very elegant analogy, but this research has been being conducted in a variety of different companies, both public and private, for various business models, whether it's therapeutic investment or different B2B or B2C business models in software and services, et cetera, that's trying to support a burgeoning industry that has a potential of getting FDA approval for certain compounds in the next year or two. So we're looking at that very closely to see if there are realistic bets that fit our investment profile, as well as risk, but also exposes us to what we believe as future industries that are very, very resilient to the current market conditions, no matter what. So having had various challenges with mental health myself, and I'm not alone. There's I think 40% of people during COVID had various mental health challenges. I believe is a big challenge going forward, and we're looking for different opportunities to really address it, not only in the U.S. but also globally. So with that, I take it back to Catherine to share more ideas.
Great, thanks, Mike. And we would like to keep this discussion interactive. So another area I like to talk about is more on the later stage. We look at various companies around the world. Our brand has always been global investing. So one of the updates I have is for TOS, which is South Korea's largest fintech play. They're right behind KakaoTalk, which is created Kakao Pay as a fintech play, similar to Venmo, PayPal, various platforms. They started with a money transferring service. Now they're expanding to also TOS Bank and TOS Securities, which are more similar to Robinhood trading platforms focused on the millennial generation. So with this, TOS actually is one of our topic picks from last year as well, focused on South Korea. Why is that? Because societal income disparity has become a bigger and bigger issue across various countries. South Korea being one that's extremely dire in the sense that most of young people feel like they may not benefit from a college education as much as before, because of the rich and poor income inequality. People actually start trading more on securities, buying stocks, versus actually going through a college and then get to a 10-year career path. Many of them believe that trading actually is the reason why they can make more money and therefore improve their lives. With the latest, boom in terms of crypto, as you can see from South Korea, this is a trend that's continuous, and we believe that with TOS, its expansion into TOS Bank and TOS Securities, this is a name to watch. One of the updates, obviously, is that overall markets have corrected, and therefore TOS has now gone through a period where, due to the South Korean won and US dollar FX change, is moving negatively 10 to 15%. However, we believe, the company is still making about 13 billion valuation, 1.3 billion in terms of revenue, and the overall growth of the potential fintech market in South Korea. We're still very excited to see how the company is doing. And now with the company raising a new fresh round, we'd love to talk to our investors to see whether there will be interest, to support this company. We believe will be the next unicorn giant. Next, I will have Wassam, also our teammate based out of Dubai, to share his newest ideas in the private tech market.
Sure, thanks, Catherine. So I think a lot of our clients and family offices we've been speaking with over the last couple of weeks have been focusing on China lately. And in China, there's actually a really interesting shift happening in the EV, the electrical vehicle sector, with China being the main actor. A while back, as you know, China has made adoption of electric vehicles a kind of a cornerstone of decarbonizing its transport sector. And as when China makes a move, they usually get massive results and achievements. And and you've probably came across a few news over the last couple of weeks, one being this morning even, where we feel we're really starting to experience the rise of China's auto industry and the China domestic auto industry actually. And it feels like, at least on our end, that it's a forerunner to something that is kind of going to be at a global scale, a tectonic shift in the auto market, because I feel Chinese EV makers are at least in China starting to sharpen their focus before actually expanding abroad. And by expanding abroad, it means starting to export their cars to international markets. So of course that poses challenges because everyone is kind of scaling factories, scaling production facilities in China. Of course, you know how on the operation side it could be challenging as well. There are supply chain issues. The cost of raw materials is been exploding with inflation, making the headlines in the news globally. So this is something that we've been seeing over the last couple months with a few deals actually we've been covering. I'll get back to this after, but this morning, as I was saying, for instance, we now know that BYD, the Chinese auto group backed by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, they've actually dethroned Tesla as the world's biggest electric vehicle producer by sales. So that's kind of a massive shift happening out there. And that, of course, is to us signaling some sort of rising dominance of China in the sector. I personally expect BYD to very soon challenge foreign automakers in their home markets. So that's something, again, especially in the US, I would say, but that's something I feel they're going to make very soon, making some really aggressive moves to go international. I don't know what to take on this, Catherine. I of course can jump in and expose a few deals that we've seen in the EV sector. But just on this, what do you think with BYD and Chinese automakers expansion?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's an area, across multiple family office forums and also across various conferences I've been to, EV is definitely a huge, discussion topic, when it comes to sustainability and how can we create a brighter future given the energy crisis we're in, focus on renewable energy, focus on battery, for example, focus on lithium, new source of energy is all top of everyone's mind. I've also come across a new company that's trying to, take advantage of Bolivia, a new area of possible lithium, battery energy. So on that topic, I think we can look at multiple opportunity across the public and private domain. In the public business, of course, like you mentioned, BYD. In the private sector, we're looking at companies that, probably in the Series A, B stage, that's now uncovering new innovation in order to create new source of energy. On that note, I also have learned, in the recent few months, we've seen quite a bit of raising for Rimac, which is a Croatia-based EV player. Wissam, would you like to give us more overview on this company?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we came across this company. They I think just closed their Series D round, raising about 500 million oversubscribed at about 1.7 billion valuation. I mean, we came across it a bit late, to be honest, but we really liked their the founding team. Kind of thought they were visionary founders. It felt like they had an unmatched in-house technology expertise, which is something that I really like, and they had a proven track record of building cars without really much capital since they launched. They launched about 12-13 years ago, back in 2009. It's a European player. They're actually building a large facility out of Croatia, right now. That capital is to go towards this, but it also is really interesting because of the backing that they achieved. So blue chip investors, large customers, think the BMW type of guys, they're basically selling their technology to these guys. So by technology, I mean the whole EV. But the really interesting part, when you look at the business model, a vertically integrated business model, is that there are three complementary businesses at the intersection of some really interesting segments. Think luxury, think auto technologies in the EV side of things, and think about new mobility. So of course they build cars on a slightly different niche than what we've been covering. It's really hypercars, basically. So think the Bugatti type of cars. They've been designing as well and manufacturing EVs and components. So they're actually providing that capacity, that technology to other car makers. That's another type of business model. And ultimately, they're literally rethinking, reinventing urban mobility by just rethinking the car user's experience with that in mind. So this is why we kind of liked it. Another one what we like in the space, it's a US player, much more well-known. Of course, it's Waymo. I think, Catherine, we actually happen to have some access to Waymo right now. We're looking at it, but maybe you wanna touch on it.
Yeah, thank you. So as Wissam mentioned, we do have seen quite a bit of investments that's currently going through 50-60%, a lower valuation. As you guys probably know, across the entire VC and public market, the bloodbath continues. Some people believe that it will last a little longer, similar to the 2000s. Our MarketX view is that, right now things have changed quite a bit since the 2000s, right? First of all, we have seen that tons of VCs have now developed a much more regionalized institutional approach. So for regions that previously had depended on American investment, such as Europe and Asia, now there's an ecosystem of VCs who can support the companies in a growth to late stage, even when American cash becomes flighty. Second, we also see that CEOs have become a lot more resilient, meaning across of top 20 VCs and also CEOs we've interviewed, most of the companies we have invested in have now focused on extending their cash flow for at least another 12 to 36 months. So where we see, previously in the 2000s where tons of companies busted because they ran out of money, now there's a lot of healthy balance sheets for companies that have been raising money for the last 12, 16 months. You might have seen significant write-downs across portfolios of Tiger Global, SoftBank. For many of the VCs, they also have been, actually waiting to slow down either their investment or, looking for the better investments out of the entire ecosystem. So with the more institutional approach and also global diversification, focus on more regional-based investing, we believe that right now we're in a much better shape than in the 2000s in terms of a recession and slowdown in VC. Sure, according to previous data, last year we're at compared to last year, end of Q2, we have seen a significant drop in terms of VC investment. However, the numbers are picking back up again because many of the investors we've talked to shared with us, this is the time they want to go back and see, for companies that have experienced an overcorrection. For example, we looked at ByteDance, which have dropped significantly. At one point in the private markets, we have seen valuations over 400. Now it's back to the hundreds. Right, with the actual profit of the company exceeding 20 billion, where are we seeing is that this is a significant opportunity for us to take advantage in because of the overcorrection in the public markets. So with that, lastly, I would just like to share with everyone a new opportunity we think is quite interesting, given the gamification in the blockchain space. You probably have heard about X Infinity, or perhaps many of you have heard about STEPN, which is a play to earn business. With X Infinity, what you do is a lot of people understand the disparity between the actual players and some of the workers that's been hired in lower income regions where they've been hired to play the game and earn the tokens. Now we have seen actually, as of today's news, STEPN has announced overall 200 million, I believe, or 120 million of actual revenue coming from so far all the users. So that's a new innovation we see in the blockchain space. In fact, we actually have seen a startup that started doing sing to earn. We know the global population of folks that love to sing, and right now it's actually quite a big opportunity for folks to connect earning with singing. So in the world of TikTok, for example, when you wanted to support others that you think have better singing skills, you can buy virtual gifts. In this new business where people get to sing and actually earn money for singing, this is a new adoption of the STEPN, of the new X Infinity model. So these are the new ideas we have seen burgeoning in the blockchain space, and we like to keep a close look at businesses that are now trying new things, adopting new business models. If you're interested, please let us know, and we will happily share our research on the new development of gamification in the blockchain space. With that, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we can't wait to release a new episode in the next 2 weeks.